actor and filmmaker. L.A., why don't you just give us out your website there one more time?
It is L.A.MARZULLI.net, www.LAMARZULLI.net.
Of course, you can catch everything you do there. You've got a great blog there, and everything to the. We're going to mention a little bit of Watcher series as well. I do want to get that in towards the end of the show, LA. Great DVD series box set. You're still going with the Watcher series, yeah?
Yeah, we finished up Watchers 8, and we took a little break from it. We're going to start back in January with Watchers 9, and we'll keep cranking them out.
Wow. Okay, we were just talking before the break there, L.A., about scriptures and Josephus, Book of Enoch. Why is the Christian faith struggling with this stuff? I mean, when I say struggling, I mean, if I was to go into any denomination, Protestant, Catholic here in Ireland, and start talking about the Nephilim, I would be ousted out, L.A. They would go, what's this guy? This guy's a crank. Get him out of here, you know? And I'm serious, you know, and it's like, you just don't hear about this stuff. It's kind of been pushed out of the, you know, Sunday school as such.
Well, it is and it isn't. The bottom line is that if we go back again to the Hebrew Bible and we read Genesis chapter 3, we get a very insightful piece of what I would call startling information. And it says, I will put enmity between your seed. And he's talking to the fallen angel at this point. He's talking to Satan. Mm-hmm. I'll put enmity between your seed and the seed of the woman. And that's literal. And that's what's going on. And we've been at war forever. Mm-hmm. It's happening now. This is what links the two phenomena together. Mm. I talked about, at the very beginning, I talked about the Raman spectroscopy. Might be a good time to talk about that.
Sure.
The Raman spectroscopy is so important to us, and the testing that was done. Is it conclusive? No. But along with the DNA evidence, it's starting to show us that, and this is our hypothesis, there's an outside agency that is manipulating the genome. Mm. And with the Raman spectroscopy they were testing, there were 4 hairs that we had. A normal human hair, that was our control sample. A dyed human hair that was there because we wanted to see what dyed hair looked like. The red hair from the Paraka skull, which, by the way, we estimate is at least 2,000 years old. And a white hair from a man who had been abducted by a female hybrid being. And he was raped. And when he awakened the next morning, he found several hairs on him. And he took the hair. So we have 4 hair samples we're conducting here. The human hair and all this is plotted on a graph. Raman spectroscopy. The human hair is on the left-hand side of the graph, comes in, goes out. The dyed hair, bottom of the graph, shoots up straight. Through the top of the graph, it's gone. This is where it gets interesting. Mm-hmm. The 2,000-year-old red Paracas hair and the white hair from the abduction track each other. The slopes are almost identical. Wow. And frankly, that shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. And when we saw that, we fell out of our chair. It seems to create a link between what happened thousands of years ago and what is happening today in the modern day UFO abduction phenomena, which points back to Genesis 3, your seed will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. And there it is. There's a breeding program which has been going on, in my opinion, for thousands of years, off and on, off and on, off and on. The remnants of the Nephilim are all around us, but it has been mostly kept down and obfuscated. Think about this, James. Mm-hmm. Only with the advent of the internet has any of this been able to surface. Only with the freedom of the internet have people been free to discover. Because go back 30 years, there's no way to track any of this stuff. There's no communication. Brian Forrester never would have been in Peru with a video camera posting it on YouTube that I would happen to Google and see.
Sure, exactly.
That's what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I've actually brought this up a couple of times, even just on simpler, ancient, historical mysteries. You know, none of this stuff. I mean, it's people are networking together in a unique way now, and I think it's a great thing. I think there's some dark sides to the internet too, LA. There's a sinister side to it too, but for the better part, I think it's a great thing, and there's a freedom of information here. I mean, I know a lot of people just, if they want truth, they go to the internet now because they'll get it somewhere. Whereas, you know, some mainstream news channels, you know, you're going to get a synthesized version of it. And I do think there's a truth embargo on a lot of topics.
Absolutely. All day long, truth embargo. You know, Stephen Bassett sort of coined that term, I think. And
yeah,
it's,
for sure.
You know, hats off to him. There's a truth embargo. There are certain factions of academia, the scientific community, which tenaciously hold on to their paradigm, which is a faith, which is a religious paradigm. In much the same way you could fault the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages for doing exactly the same thing. If you read the Bible, you're condemned to death. I mean, that's crazy. And that's what's going on here. What it really reminds me of is Planet of the Apes, the first movie.
Yeah.
Don't go in the forbidden zone. Oh my gosh, you know, go to the forbidden zone. And that's exactly where we are. You know, you can't look at this. You can't look at that. No, you can't go here. No, we can't find this. No, we can't show you. For instance, I'm at one museum, and there was this very large spearhead, very large. And underneath it, it said, this was a ceremonial spearhead used by the Hopewell Indian, the mound builders. And I looked at my friend and I said, baloney. They don't know where it was from. You know, there's in other words, the viewer is told this in a museum. This large spearhead was ceremonial. Well, where was the spearhead found? They don't tell you that. Was it found next to a 9-footer? Because if it was, then it's no longer ceremonial, it's utilitarian.
Yeah.
And see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And this is, they control the information. You can't look at anything. Any object that goes against the Darwinian paradigm is dealt with.
You know, L.A., there's a lot of people out there, and if you say any of this stuff to them, even historical, ancient mysteries, Nephilim, any of this stuff, and you go, you know, there's a stranglehold on the information, and they go, you know, why would a university or why would somebody do that? Why would they, you know, censor this stuff like? And I go, it's not about why they would. Don't ask the question why they censor this stuff. Look at the evidence first, and then that's a secondary question, not a first. You know, and if you do that and you just sit and you look at the evidence, and I know that's what you do, Ella. You go out in the field and you grab this stuff like bull by the horns.
Yeah, I'm in the field. I'm in the field a lot. Look, a perfect example is the Shroud of Turin. We interviewed Barry Schwartz, who was the part of the 1978 Stirp research team that went to Turin, Italy, and he was up. You know, they had 120 hours to look at the shroud. Barry was up for probably about 110 of them. I mean, he was just relentless, and because it was a chance of a lifetime opportunity.
Oh, sure.
He shot everything. You know, this is before digital photography.
Yeah.
And he told me that when the carbon-14 testing came out, that a university was given a £1 million donation from an anonymous source, thanking them for proving that the shroud was a medieval fake. And what happened with the shroud, and I know this right from the horse's mouth. The carbon-14 team was there to test the shroud. And there was a protocol which had been established years in advance. You just don't call up and go, hey, we'd like to come over and carbon-14 the shroud. Yeah, come over next Tuesday. Baloney. Everything. How, you know, you come on this date. We'll take 3 samples from different parts of the shroud. Everything was spelled out. I mean, it's like a contract. This is a priceless artifact. 3 samples were supposed to be taken from the shroud. The day comes to take them. These guys in suits come walking in, shut the whole thing down, and later on they let the scientists back in and they go, we're going to take 1 sample from the corner of the shroud here. What? The protocol that was established out the window. So these scientists take the sample. They carbon-14 date it, 3 different labs. They all date it to medieval times, 15th century, 14th century. Okay, the shroud is a medieval forgery. Everyone laughs. A lot of the people who look at this stuff and all the preponderance of evidence surrounding the shroud that pointed to authenticity left us going, what? That doesn't make any sense. Sure enough, about 20 years later, actually more than 20 years, a husband and wife team who are not scientists at all, begin to studying the shroud and believe that what happened is that the sample that was taken was contaminated because there was a fire in the 15th century.
Ah.
And the poor sisters of Clare, who were expert at creating invisible weaving in tapestries, which is pretty much a lost art, were hired by the Vatican to restore the shroud. They theorized that if that was the case, then you would be able to see at a microscopic level end-to-end splices in the shroud. And so one of the members of the Shroud of Turin, who had part of that sample that was given to the laboratories to test, went down to his lab, took the sample, put it under a microscope, thinking to himself, I'll debunk this in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And when he went down and looked at the sample and examined it, he was blown away, taken aback, because what he found was precisely what these two lay people had theorized. He discovered end-to-end splices on the Shroud of Turin, and he realized that they were not linen, they were cotton, and the cotton was dyed to match the fabric. The reason why I'm telling you this story is that there's an agenda. There's an axe to grind. Anything that's supernatural, anything that points to the supernatural goes against the Darwinian paradigm. Thus, if there is a supernatural, if it points back to the biblical narrative, which all my work does, and if the biblical narrative, if we can prove the biblical narrative, and that's why we're on the trail, because it's pointing back to the biblical narrative. And if the biblical narrative is correct, what else in the biblical narrative is correct? And then it gets into salvation and the crucifixion and the blood of Jesus and mankind's sin nature. And it blows the Darwinian theory right out of the water. Because Darwinists don't know. When Ben Steiner's movie Expelled, always go back to that, sits down with Richard Dawkins, where does the first self-replicating molecule come from? Dawkins has no stinking idea. Doesn't have a clue. And so all you can default to is, well, maybe millions of years ago, in a race far, far away, a galaxy far, far away, a race of aliens who have, themselves would have got to a high point of civilization, created mankind and then seeded us through the universe. And we wound up on planet Earth, which was suitable for life. Presto changeo, here we are. That's all he's got. That's all he's got.
But that's ludicrous in itself to even suggest that.
In himself. It's circular reasoning.
Exactly. Ludicrous circular reasoning. Wow. On the Turin shroud, I actually knew about the splicing of the shroud, but I didn't know about the medieval and the fire and all that.
Of Clare.
Wow, that's fascinating, L.A. What a fascinating research the whole Turin has been, the shroud. Not only that, the actual image of Christ that's in it, there is no known technique for, even if you wanted to force that, even if you were in the medieval, even if you were in the modern age, there isn't any known method of actually imbuing that image into the cloth as well, is there? No, there isn't. I've come to call the Shroud of Turin God's calling card, because that's frankly what I think it is. And it demonstrates graphically the greatest event on the planet. This God-man, Yeshua or Jesus, rising from the dead, like he said he would. And that is a prototype of where some of us are gonna go at some point in time. And that shroud, here's the deal. Secondo Pia took a photograph of that in, well over, I don't know, I forget exactly the date, but many, many decades ago. Let me move this. Hold on, James. All right, brother.
And Secondo Pia took a photograph of the shroud. He was, and this is in the nascent days of photography. In fact, I'm going to Google it here. Secondo Pia, and I can give you the exact year in a second. Put Shroud of Turin. But what happened is, he's taken the shroud, he's taken the pictures of the shroud, and he goes back to his laboratory. And the first shroud photo, where is it? 1862? I don't think so. Yeah, it could be. Nope, that's not it. I'm just where is it? Why can't I just get the stinking date for it? Ugh. Anyway, the bottom line is he takes a shot of the Shroud of Turin, and he goes back to his dark room, and he begins to develop this thing. Okay, so Secunda Pia, May 28, 1898. All right? 1898. So remember, the shroud is a cloth, and they can see an image of a man on it who seems to be crucified. So Pia takes the shot of the shroud, goes back to his dark room, and these are glass plates. That's how everything was done. It's old-fashioned photography, all right? 1898. I mean, it's over 100 years ago. And he starts to develop, and he almost drops the glass plate, because what comes up in the solution of chemicals, because that's how it works, is a positive image. What should have been there was a negative image. It's not. It's a positive image, which means that the shroud is a negative image, and when photographed, the negative becomes the positive. And there's no way you can fake that. You can't fake it today. In medieval times, there's no way. And now we theorize that there was, and this is the work of Dame Isabel Pixek, who we actually interviewed in our Watchers series. She believes that there was an event horizon where time stopped and gravity ceased to be. Literally, an event horizon, singularity, and the body that was laying in that tomb was levitated, and the shroud was pulled taut, and that body levitating off the slab, because there's no indentation in the buttocks or in the shoulders. If the body had been laying in the shroud, you would see the buttocks pressed in and the shoulders pressed in. It's not. She theorizes that the body levitated, the shroud pulled taut around the body, and then the body dematerializing in infinite points of light, basically a singularity. And this is astounding. And, when you look at this and you look at the Shroud of Turin, and it's like, it's a mind blower. Well, even with all the evidence, including the carbon-14 dating, which since has been reversed, now, the skeptics can't go there anymore because it's been proven that it was deliberately skewed. But they always bring it up year after year and try to, tell the public that it was carbon-14 dating, carbon-14 dated to the 15th century, when nothing could be further from the truth. And this is what it makes you wonder: how can a person sit there in front of a camera knowing that the carbon-14 dating was skewed and has been proven as such by the poor sisters Sinclair, look right into the camera and lie? The guy's got an agenda. Yeah. The guy's got an agenda, and so do the Darwinists. They have an agenda. Anything supernatural goes against that agenda, and that's why it's suppressed.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to focus on. That. It's a great example that you brought up, and glad you did. This is a supernatural artifact from a supernatural person, from a supernatural time in history. And I do believe even today there's supernatural forces at work on this planet. It's going right back in deep antiquity, for sure. It's always been there. The Bible is full of supernatural events, L.A. They're so numerous to mention. Where does the Nephilim fit into this? Are we going to see these guys return? Is this where we're looking at now? Are they coming back as a supernatural force?
Well, this is a controversial passage. I get a lot of flack from people. But Jesus warns us. Yeshua warns us. And remember, this is what's so fascinating to me about this. When he utters this, and this is why it's always got to be kept in historical context, that there is no church, no cathedrals, no priests, no confessionals, no candles, no altars, no nothing. There's nothing. It's Jesus walking around with 12 guys that he's handpicked. That's it. It's all he's got. There's nothing else going on. And he says one of the most absurd statements you could possibly utter. Basically, when I return, it'll be like the days of Noah. What? What the heck? Who do you think you are telling us this? What do you mean when you return, it'll be like the days of Noah? And this is what's amazing about it. He truly is the Son of God. And he's telling us this stuff 2,000 years ago. When the Son of Man returns, it will be like the days of Noah, which immediately points back to what differentiates the days of Noah than any other time in history. And it's the presence of the Nephilim and the fallen angels interfacing with the men and women of earth. That is precisely what we see now in the so-called extraterrestrial or alien breeding program and implanting program. This is what we see. Men are taken, sperm is taken from the men. Ovum is taken from the women. Men are forced to copulate with female hybrids, vice versa with the females. They're often reabducted years later and shown a hybrid being. We hear this over and over and over again, to the point now where Dr. David Jacobs, who we interviewed in Watchers 7 and Watchers 8, believes that these hybrid beings look and can pass as human and now are beginning to integrate into our society. Can I prove that? No, I can't. Not yet, but we're working on it.
No. I think this is what the Watcher series does, is, you're independent. You have this academic approach to this. You're looking for evidence. It's an evolving series. It's an evolving story, as we say. The thing for me, what's going on with the whole UFO phenomenon in LA, according to you? I mean, it's so confusing out there for people. There's a lot of disinformation. Where is the disinformation coming from? Is the disinformation coming from the people above, the ones that are watching us, or is the disinformation coming from governments? Is it coming from both? Out of all the data out there, you cannot wash it all away. There's a tangible thing there. What do you think is the UFO phenomenon, in your opinion, your theory?
Well, in my opinion, this is what I've coined and labeled the coming Great Deception. Mm-hmm. And this links to Darwinism. Mm-hmm. It's inexorably linked and connected to Darwinism. There's no doubt about it. Darwinism cut the knees off of the Christian worldview, at least in Europe. And when that happened, it left a vacuum. And that vacuum was, well, if there is no God, no supernatural, how then were we created? We see shows like Ancient Aliens, which are promulgating the ancient astronaut theory. We see movies like Prometheus several years ago, which are promulgating the ancient astronaut theory. We have, which I've already mentioned, Richard Dawkins, who promulgates the ancient astronaut theory that we were seeded here by a race of highly evolved extraterrestrials. Guess what? It's everywhere. This is the paradigm that is being to the people all around the globe. Mm-hmm. And when they return, this is the coming Great Deception, and they will return. And when they return, they will tell us that they created all life on this planet, that they genetically manipulated early man, that they started the world's civilizations and religions, and now, at this critical juncture in human history, they, E.T., are back to usher mankind in to a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge. And oh, by the way, we have this small little implantable chip, which is a DNA upgrade. Take this chip, you'll live 300 to 500 years disease-free. You'll be able to buy, sell, or trade. All your identification will be on it. It's a DNA enhancer. It's an upgrade. And the line for that will be around the block. And that will also, in my opinion, dovetail into ancient prophetic texts, which warn of exactly this type of a mark. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, in Watchers 7 and Watchers 8, we had a man who said he was abducted 40 years ago when he was 5 years old and had an implant. And we tested the implant with various scientific instruments. And in Watchers 8, we were in an operating theater and we extracted the implant from this man. So we know that the implants are real. They're tangible. They're not made of metal that we know. This is a highly classified, highly secretive project. When we were in the operating theater, the object was cloaked. Mm-hmm. We couldn't find the object. And we talk about that exclusively in Watchers 8. I can tell you more about it if you want to.
Oh, please.
But we have proof. We have proof that the phenomena is real.
Wow, fascinating, fascinating. Okay, so in today we've got exopolitics. I actually get so turned off when I hear people talking about exopolitics, and I think people's brains have just literally dropped out of their heads. And I think they all want to see the aliens come and land and go and shake hands with them and go, hey, what's your civilization like? Give us all this technology that you have. I don't think it's going to be like that, LA. I think I don't think it has to be sinister either. I just think, keep your open mind on things, don't have to believe what you're told. You don't have to, you just, don't drop your brains out. Keep an honest mind at this thing, like.
Well, I look, if we really look at the abduction phenomena and what these characters are up to, in my opinion, it's no good. And Dr. David Jacobs, we disagree on maybe some of the particulars of the phenomena, but we both agree that it's highly malevolent. That's what we believe. Dr. Roger Leir, who spent years in the UFO abduction alien implant phenomena, the alien scalpel. I mean, that was his website, still is. And he was a great friend. He's in all of our Watchers. We dedicated Watchers 8 to him. He was a very close friend, was in every single episode. And at the end of what happened in the operating theater, and I'll tell you that story in a minute, because I'm leading up to it, I suppose, Dr. Roger Leir looked at me and said, L.A., I now believe that there's a supernatural component to the UFO phenomena. And James, let me tell you the story. This man came to us and said he had been abducted at 5 years old. When they first took him, he fought him off. They came again and got him. He went right up through the ceiling and was laid on a table. He was implanted. Years later, he started having excruciating pain where the implant was. Excruciating. So the first step was we had him fill out forms and questionnaires. He wanted to remain anonymous. That's always a good sign. And we did an X-ray. And we found the metallic object right below the knee. We took him later. We got a CAT scan. And we found the metallic object right below the right knee. Then we took a Gauss meter, which measures the magnetic field.
Sure.
This little metallic object about the size of a pencil point, pencil lead at the end of a pencil, measured 8.0 to 8.5 milligauss on a Gauss meter. Richard Shaw's fully charged camera battery was measuring 10.0 on the Gauss meter. How can a little object like this, in a man's leg, register 8.0 milligauss on a Gauss meter? It also was giving out a radio frequency, excuse me, of about 330 gigahertz.
Wow.
How's that possible?
Wow.
How's that possible? With a stud finder, the stud finder would show exactly where the implant was. Then we took him to the head surgeon, Dr. Matriciana, and he took a ultrasound, which shows you where the object is below the surface. And that's what it shows you, and it comes up on a monitor. And he took the X-ray, put it over the guy's leg, put a little black dot where the object should be, squirted some gel on it, took the one from the ultrasound machine. He found the thing less than 2 minutes. All right, guys, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. So January 4th, 2014, we're there with 3 camera crews, nurses, doctors. Dr. Leir's there, Dr. Matriciano's there. We've got 20 people in a room with an HD monitor watching the proceedings. Matriciano takes the X-ray, places it over the guy's knee, makes a little black dot where the implant is corresponding to the picture that he's holding, the X-ray that he's holding, squirts some gel on the guy's leg. We figure, okay, we'll be out of here in 20 minutes. And for the next hour and a half, and numerous times applying the gel, goes over the same 3-inch by 8-inch strip of leg. He can't find it. And at this point, he looks at Dr. Leir after an hour and 15, 20 minutes and goes, maybe we should get another X-ray. And at that point, I get the tap on the shoulder from the spirit of a living God. And he tells me, you need to pray. You need to do it now. And I open my mouth. I'm in a room full of people that don't believe like I do. And I say, guys, this is going to sound a little weird, but I'm going to pray and I'm going to do it now. And without waiting for permission, I prayed. And this is my prayer. Father, if there are forces which are cloaking this device, I pray that you would break their power and do it soon. James,
wow.
Less than 2 minutes later, the object appeared on the ultrasound monitor from nowhere. Everyone was taken aback. Everyone was blown away. Dr. Matriciana kept taking his wand off and on, the guy's leg to see that surely there must be something wrong with my machinery here. Nothing wrong with his machinery. What was sobering to us, they knew where we were, what we were up to, what we were about to do. They were tracking us. They knew exactly what was going on. And when we called upon a higher power, someone greater than them, he showed up and broke the stranglehold that was there, and we got results. And this is what I tell people who are abducted, who are part of the abduction phenomena. If you want to get out, there's a way to get out. And you call upon the name of Yeshua. You call upon the name of Jesus. That name is above all other names. And I'm not talking religious here. I'm talking about a cosmic war. When you call upon him, he will come to your aid. You know, he will get you out of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, you know, I think you think you're definitely doing something something really good on the Watcher series. I know it's a different type of media, obviously, to the books. I mean, I recommend people to get copies of it out there. You've done what, eight is it 8 DVDs now? 8
DVDs, and we're working on 9 in January.
Wow. Well, I look forward to number 9 coming out. L.A., I know you've looked at the moon thing as well. What the hell is going on the moon? What is going on up there? I mean, I don't think we could believe a word out of NASA's mouth, personally. But I mean, it's so bizarre. I don't even believe half the NASA photos. I just find it incredibly. I watched the most recent one from the Sci-Fi Channel there, Aliens on the Moon. I mean, this is incredible stuff, like.
Well, it is, and as far as the moon is concerned, we did a series on it, a film piece on it, I think in Watchers 2.
Okay.
And we wondered why the moon seemed to be rotating. We have since sort of retracted our position on that. We went with the story because people were YouTubing about it and talking about that the moon seemed to be different. And we even had, some other stories like magnetic northward change and that type of stuff. So we knew something was up in it. We've done more research on it, and we sort of backed off on the story. But the reason why we ran with it is because, wow, a lot of people were noticing it. And this is what's great about the internet. Go back 50 years, and no, you wouldn't be posted like this. All of a sudden, a bunch of people notice something, and it's on YouTube, it's on the internet. While we can't trust everything that's there, it's certainly a great source of information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think NASA's covering up stuff up there?
Absolutely, all day long.
Do you think they know the extent of the problem, L.A.? Do you think they're maybe just covering something up until they find out, or do you think they're totally in the know and they have full knowledge of what's going on?
Absolutely.
Wow.
The insiders know exactly what's going on. This thing's been covered up. They are well aware that we are being visited on an ongoing basis and have been for decades and decades and decades. They know it. Mm-hmm. I believe that some of the technology has been back engineered. Philip Corso, and I understand that the bunkers will have a field day with him, but Philip Corso talked about it in his book, and he had no, government dog in the hunt. I mean, he was just, a guy telling everybody what he saw. I think there's back engineering that's going on. I believe that there are, I think a great series, which really has it wired, is Steven Spielberg's series Taken. Mm-hmm. Starts in World War II with the Foo Fighters and brings you right up to the present day with this hybrid being that they're interested in that is able to stop time. And that corresponds with the biblical narrative, which talks about the Antichrist. The Antichrist,
the
man who is instead of Christ, will be a hybrid being, in my opinion, will be a classic Nephilim, in my opinion. He will be Nephilim. That's what he will be.
Mm. Tell us about the Nephilim, going back to what we originally started the show with then. The return of the Nephilim, if you want, you can bring it in as well. I mean, there was originally 200 Nephilim, is that correct?
No, there were 200 Watcher angels.
Watcher angels.
Watcher angels that fell to Earth and came to Earth and landed on Mount Hermon. In the days of Jared. Mm-hmm. Those Watcher angels took wives who, from whomever they wanted, they just took wives. Mm-hmm. And so there was a marriage contract, at least. What was interesting is they went into the women, and the progeny of that union between the fallen angels and the women, those are the Nephilim.
Sorry. So the offspring are the Nephilim. Sorry, I forgot that.
Yes,
the offspring of the Nephilim. The 200 Watcher angels, are they punished for this? Are they? What do we know about the two watcher angels?
Well, the 200 watcher angels apparently were chained and are in a place called a gloomy dungeon. The book of Jude tells us that in the New Testament found in the Bible. It tells us that these angels, these fallen ones, are chained in gloomy dungeons. Tartarus would be the Greek word for it. And when Jesus descends into the bowels of the earth, this is a really interesting part of what we read in the New Testament. It's just incredible. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about sci-fi and supernatural. Mm-hmm. It's the most sci-fi book on the planet. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Jesus is being crucified. He dies and he gives up his ghost. Then he goes, so he's telling someone about this later, obviously, because no one's going with him. So this is after he rises from the dead. Now he's telling, Peter, James, who knows? He's telling somebody what he did. He goes and he descends to this place where these watcher angels are. And it is a proclamation. Basically, in our opinion, he's telling them, guess what, guys? You're not getting out. I just got the keys to earth. Checkmate. It's over. You're not getting out. And that's why he goes there. And there's a paper by this theologian called Bullinger who expounds on this, which is absolutely astounding. And I find that just incredible. And so, we read about this stuff. The 200 watcher angels are chained. There are others. There is a second incursion. Why? Because Moses is writing Genesis, 1,000 years after the flood? Hundreds of years after the flood? Mm-hmm. And he gets to the point, if he would have written, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, period. Because he's writing about something that happened hundreds of years prior to him. So he would just say, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. There's one incursion. They all got wiped out by the flood. It's over, right? Mm-hmm. That's grammatically correct. That's how you would write it. That's not what he says. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. And also afterward. Whoa. Why would he write that? You get what I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. When the sons of God saw the daughters of men, took wives, went into them, that's the biblical, that's coitus. There's no way around it.
Sure.
And had sex with them, and the progeny were the Nephilim. And guess what? Sodom and Gomorrah, Nephilim. Mm-hmm. The Tower of Babel, Geborim. Nimrod was a mighty man, Geborim, Nephil, to fall. That's Nephilim. Mm-hmm. The Nephilim are in the promised land. Why? Because the text tells us. Joshua and Caleb come back around 3,500 years ago. What did you see? We saw the Nephilim there. Oh, really? It's right there. And then Moses is writing this at that time. Saying, that's where the book is from. Moses is writing it. It's the hand of Moses. The Nephilim are on the earth and also afterward.
Is the Elohim related to the Nephilim then? Are they another name?
No, Elohim's completely different.
Tell us what the Elohim is, because this is what I hear people talking that the Elohim and the Nephilim are the same, but they seem to be referred to as two groups of people.
Yeah. The Elohim, and you got to go into the book of Genesis and other places. Mm-hmm. It's a name for the Most High God.
Right.
That's what it is. It's the triune Godhead, the Elohim. That's mm-hmm. what that is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. I want to finish up on a little on biblical prophecy, because it is all about where we're at today, and I know a lot of this is about kind of research of who we are today, where we're at. This biblical prophecy being acted out, many animal die-offs that were, I remember watching that happen, and how much stuff is really going on in this planet for people to wake up. They seem to just ignore this stuff, L.A.
Well, they do. Again, look, most people are asleep. We are in a little, in a literal matrix. Mm-hmm. Think about the endless ball games, the endless changing, the changing of the cycles correspond with the endless ball games. Now, I got nothing against sports, okay? Nothing at all.
Sure.
But it becomes, some people can tell you who was the second baseman for the 1962 Yankee team. They know that stuff. And they don't, it's like, that's okay. If that's what you want to do with your life, that's fine. I'm not putting you down. That's okay. But people are, they're asleep. They're in the matrix. Mm-hmm. Obama gave me a cell phone. They're in the matrix. And endless ball games, endless circus, bread and circus on American TV. Man being swallowed by an anaconda. That's bread and circus all day long. Meanwhile, there's a cosmic war which is taking place above us, all around us. We are in some of the most tumultuous, tenuous times I've ever seen. Think about Fukushima, the radioactivity. It's now reached the west coast of the United States. Think about the record seismology, the record amount of earthquakes in and around Las Vegas. Think about the record cold, record drought, record temperatures all across the United States and the world. Think about the Ring of Fire operating where the earthquakes and the volcanic activity are going through the roof. Think about the Bartabunga or the Ayatollah volcano, which closed the airspace over Great Britain and Northern Europe several years back.
Oh, yeah.
Both those volcanoes are now, erupting. Think about Yellowstone, which some people believe may go sooner than later. Think about the fish and animal die-offs, which is happening on a global level. Think about the Ebola virus. Think about the government. Think about the wars and rumors of war that we see happening all over us. Consider ISIL, the Islamic State of Syria, Iraq, and the Levant. The end game there is to take over Israel. That's the end game. The prize is Jerusalem. The endless war, the threat of nuclear armament by Iran. Iran gets the bomb, they will go after Israel. There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Think about the famine. And Jesus predicts all this 2,000 years ago. Before I come in the last days, I'm paraphrasing, there will be wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, and troublesome times. That's exactly what we're seeing. And all this stuff is firing at the same time. If it was just one thing, we could go, well, okay, fine, no problem. But it's not. It's all across the board. Temperature records, earthquakes. I mean, look at the signs in the heavens that we're seeing. The outplaying of UFOs, the appearing of UFOs on a global level everywhere. The ongoing crop circles, the cattle mutilations, the human abductions, the human mutilations, the breeding program, the implants that we're seeing. You start putting all this stuff together, and it's incredibly alarming. Look at the coming collapse of the American dollar, the petrodollar. It will happen. And when it happens, that's it. Think about the threat of the electromagnetic pulse weapon, which, third world terrorist countries like Korea or Iran could implement so easily by just converting an oil tanker, throwing it in the Gulf of Mexico, firing a warhead, a missile, 200 miles and detonating that thing over the heartland like Oklahoma City. Who cares about the fall from the radiation? That's not the deal. You've just short-circuited everything. Computers, anything with a computer or electrical circuit, gone. Cars won't start. The grid goes down. Millions of people die. That's a real grave threat, and that could happen at any time. And America has done nothing to protect its citizenry. I mean, think about how many people are addicted to the drugs, which are prevalent all over the globe. Go back 50 years ago, there weren't rehab centers on every corner. Now everybody's family has one or two people that have gone through rehab. Unprecedented times we're living in, James.
Yeah, for sure.
The Bible tells us this will happen in the last days.
For sure. L.A., it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today. I know we're at the top of the show. Just give us out your website one more time before we finish up, L.A.
www.lamarzulli.net. You can avail yourself of the new book, On the Trail of a Nephilim 2, the Watcher series. We've got some great packages and great deals. I promise you won't be bored. The stuff is a labor of love. We love what we do. And when you guys buy this stuff, it enables us to continue on, pay the bills, keep the lights on, put gas in the car, buy some groceries, go on vacation, and, of course, get the next project out. And that's what we're doing now.
Oh, awesome, Ella. And I thank you for the sample chapters you sent me as well for On the Trail of Nephilim 2. Fascinating.
There you go.
I can't wait for it. I can't wait for my copy, so I'm going to be getting it very soon. Ella, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you again. I hope you're going to come back on and maybe do a Capricorn TV interview in the not too distant future. But again...
Oh, I'd love to do it sooner than later, James. Put me on, my friend.
Okay, brother. Look, great talking to you, and I'll speak to you
up Watchers 8, and we took a little break from it. We're going to start back in January with Watchers 9, and we'll keep cranking them out.
Wow. Okay, we were just talking before the break there, LA, about scriptures and Josephus, Book of Enoch. Why is the Christian faith struggling with this stuff? I mean, when I say struggling, I mean, if I was to go into any denomination, Protestant, Catholic here in Ireland, and start talking about the Nephilim, I would be ousted out, LA. They would go, what's this guy? This guy's a crank. Get him out of here, you know? And I'm serious, you know, and it's like, you just don't hear about this stuff. It's kind of been pushed out of the, you know, Sunday school as such.
Well, it is and it isn't. The bottom line is that if we go back again to the Hebrew Bible and we read Genesis chapter 3, we get a very insightful piece.
And filmmaker. LA, why don't you just give us out your website there one more time?
It is L.A.MARZILLI.net, www.L.A.MARZULLI.net.
Of course, you can catch everything you do there. You've got a great blog there, and everything to the. We're going to mention a little bit of the Washer series as well. I do want to get that in towards the end of the show, LA. Great DVD series, box set. You're still going with the Washer series, yeah?
Yeah, we finished testing. There were 4 hairs that we had. A normal human hair, that was our control sample. A dyed human hair that was there because we wanted to see what dyed hair looked like. The red hair from the Paraka skull, which, by the way, we estimate is at least 2,000 years old. And a white hair from a man who had been abducted by a female hybrid being. And he was raped. And when he awakened the next morning, he found several hairs on him, and he took the hair. So we have 4 hair samples we're conducting here. The human hair and all this is plotted on a graph, Raman spectroscopy. The human hair is on the left-hand side of the graph, comes in, goes out. The dyed hair, bottom of the graph, shoots up straight through the top of the graph. It's gone. This is where it gets interesting. Mm-hmm. The 2,000-year-old red Paracas hair and the white hair from the abduction track each other. The slopes are almost identical. Wow. And frankly, that shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. And when we saw that, we fell out of our chair. It seems to create a link between what happened thousands of years ago and what is happening today in the modern day UFO abduction phenomena, which points back to Genesis 3, your seed will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. And there it is. There's a breeding program which has been going on, in my opinion, for thousands of years, off and on, off and on, off and on. The remnants of the Nephilim are all around us, but it has been mostly kept down and obfuscated. Think about this, James. Mm-hmm. Only with the advent of the internet has any of this been able to surface. Only with the freedom of the internet have people been free to discover. Because go back 30 years of what I would call startling information. And it says, I will put enmity between your seed. And he's talking to the fallen angel at this point. He's talking to Satan. Mm-hmm. I'll put enmity between your seed and the seed of the woman. And that's literal. And that's what's going on. And we've been at war forever. Mm-hmm. It's happening now. This is what links the two phenomena together. Mm. I talked about, at the very beginning, I talked about the Raman spectroscopy. Might be a good time to talk about that.
Sure.
The Raman spectroscopy is so important to us and the testing that was done. Is it conclusive? No. But along with the DNA evidence, it's starting to show us that, and this is our hypothesis, there's an outside agency that is manipulating the genome. Mm. And with the Raman spectroscopy, there were